Hey everybody, it is Legal Tech Week for January 17th, 2025. I am Bob Ambrogi. I write a blog called Law Sites and have a podcast called Law Next. And a little bit of a smallish panel today, people going here and there and having other conflicts, but that's okay because we got some good stuff to talk about. And so our panelists today are, as you see before you, Nikki, you want to kick us off with introductions?
Yep, my name's Nikki Black. I'm the Principal Legal Insight Strategist at AffiniPay, which is the parent company of LawPay My Case, DocketWise, and CasePeer. I write legal technology columns for ABA Journal, Above the Law, Daily Record, and I also oversee and write our legal industry report. 2025 version's coming out in a couple months, and I'm excited to talk about some of the stories we have on deck today.
Okay. And
Mhm.
Steve, want to go next?
Hi, everyone. Steve Embry. I write the blog Tech Law Crossroads. I'm also a regular contributor to the Kentucky Bench and Bar magazine and the One Legal blog. And I am co-chair of the ABA 2025 Tech Show, which will take place in early April in Chicago. Registration is open.
I think I'm registered now, actually. That's a good thing.
I hope so.
Yeah. Um, and Joe.
Joe Patrice. I'm from Above the Law and the Thinking Like a Lawyer podcast. I am here this week, very excited to, my lifetime poker win percentage is in the very smallly positive. So that puts me to be better off than some people.
All right, so we have Maureen Blando in the chat saying she's the cuckoo. Asked if we could find a legal tech angle to Goldstein. Life is tough. We need some fun. Lest we not disappoint Maureen, Joe has been working on this, and he's got some legal tech angles to report on here, I guess.
Yeah. So,
Wait,
all
tell
right.
us what's going on here. What's the story?
Yeah. So to set the stage, Tom Goldstein, who is partner of Goldstein and Russell and the co-founder, along with his wife, of SCOTUS blog, which obviously has brought new technology to the idea of covering the Supreme Court. So that's exciting. But he was indicted yesterday by in a federal tax case. The allegations are a little wild. It
To say the
seems
least.
it, you know you got a good indictment when there's a whole range of cast of characters that have names for them like California Businessman 2 and Foreign Gambler 3. So it appears that while he was arguing cases in front of the Supreme Court, he got involved in high stakes underground gambling with a bunch of billionaires and actors, and got some big wins that he allegedly didn't really report to the government. And he also suffered some even bigger losses that he then allegedly used firm funds to cover. And on top of all of this, it's alleged that he had upwards of four mistresses working at the firm, not doing any work, but drawing a salary and health insurance the whole time. Uh, and that's, it's not it's not great, but I mean, as I was just saying before we got on here, to argue cases before the Supreme Court while losing money in Macau in an underground poker ring, and then turning around arguing another one, all while juggling multiple mistresses at the workplace you share with your wife, that is peak performance. Say what you will. I mean, that is a guy who is really doing what I don't think any of us could really pull off.
You don't get to be a top-notch Supreme Court litigator without some skills and talents.
Yeah. So, all right. So, how does this relate to legal tech? I have a few angles that I thought it related to. There is, as part of the allegations of how this got to happen, how he got to using his law firm's funds. There's allegations that he's like trading incoming fees for satisfying personal debts. That he convinced a litigation funder, an unnamed lit funder, to give him a bunch of money. And it's not quite clear the way they write the complaint whether the litigation financing knew that they were doing this to bail him out personally, or if he took this money as a down payment on some cases and then siphoned the money off. But there's some litigation finance folks who gave him a bunch of money that he then used to pay off some of his, at one point, $16 million personal debt. So there's a bit of a litigation finance aspect. But the real key that I thought was techish of it is that he owned 100% of this firm despite the name. And despite the fact that they had other partners, they were all income partners, basically. And he controlled all the finances, and he ran the firm's accounting through a, quote, recent college graduate who had no formal training in accounting. This is how you manage to do these sorts of things. But that got me thinking about, although he did have a Canada-based bookkeeping software, so don't know what that necessarily means, or if it was legal-based. But what got me about it was we're having a lot of talk in our sector, the legal tech coverage, of firms, especially smaller firms, moving more and more towards automating these bookkeeping functions. Oh, well, we can have, this, we have it. I mean, like a lot of these folks, especially in the smaller law firm area, are offering these software-based solutions so that you don't necessarily need a bookkeeper. You can kind of keep track of your own thing. Which is good in the abstract because it's hard to make a practice go and keep full-time bookkeepers around. But one of the takeaways I had was there is a bit of an ethical worry there because the fewer humans get their eyes on the books, the more mistresses can be paid health insurance premiums.
Well, all right. I was waiting until you said that, and I'm gonna have to, I actually know a lot about all of those types of tools. My company actually is involved in developing those tools and providing them to lawyers. And what I'm going to say is that, in rebuttal to that, is the idea behind these tools is that it provides more visibility into your firm's finances, both for your firm's bookkeeper, if you have one, and for your accountant. And it makes it easier to get the information to your accountant if they use QuickBooks or the accounting within the solution. I don't think that these tools are actually offered to provide more visibility. Like, and I'm not one to sell my company's products here, but this is directly on point. Like Smart Spend, which is a tool that we're in the process of rolling out, provides complete visibility into the expenses of the firm in a way that actually prevents fraud. So, what happens is you have these bookkeepers that don't know what they're doing, that no one has any visibility. Lawyers don't know what's actually happening. They don't like dealing with the books. So they just hand it all off to this one person. And then these persons siphon money out of the firm. In this case, you have a lawyer siphoning the money out of the firm, ideally positioned to do that. But I'm going to completely object to that latter half of your story and laugh at the first part, the former part.
Do you have a plug-in for mistress management? Is that a new thing you're going to be working on?
Yeah, no, we definitely don't have that. We're financial and practice management, not mistress management, just to be clear.
Okay.
It seemed to me that the issue is not the tool, but who has access to the information that the tool develops. I mean, that sounds like to me that's where the breakdown was. If only one guy has access to all the information, then it doesn't matter, whether you have a human or an automated system doing it.
Yeah.
I think just one other legal tech. Well, you want to respond to what he said? I've got a different point to make. So why don't you respond?
And obviously I agree with all of this, that these tools are useful for that sort of thing. My point though is, like Steve was just saying about who uses them, the fewer points of breakdown and the more consolidation of the oversight, the more risk you have. And in this instance, there was a college kid doing this and who didn't really have much way of stopping his boss from doing stuff. When you have have real bookkeepers and stuff and more people involved, there's more points of failure if you're trying to run a fraud. And my only statement is, like anything, the more you consolidate and you empower the one firm owner to have control of what's going on using these tools, which is a good thing. It also, though, does mean there's fewer whistleblowers in the chain and stuff like that.
Well,
The other point I wanted to make, though, is that he is the other legal tech aspect to this whole story is that he is sort of a legal tech icon in the sense that he came out of nowhere. He was this nobody who said, I want to be a Supreme Court litigator. And he started SCOTUS blog as a way of promoting himself as an expert on the Supreme Court. He was like he had like a sole practice or just him and his wife or something. And he started SCOTUS blog back in the day when, blogging was still unusual at that point. And, I mean, where's Kevin O'Keefe when you need him? I mean, this is Kevin O'Keefe. He was like Kevin O'Keefe's poster child for why lawyers should be blogging because look, this guy comes out of nowhere, starts a blog, and now he's got all these cases at the Supreme Court. And and SCOTUS blog really became, and I think you mentioned this earlier, Joe, but it I don't know if you want to say revolutionized, but it totally changed how the Supreme Court gets covered, and it became a legitimate news organization that other news organizations relied on to get information about what was going on at the Supreme Court. So it's what he built, from a legal tech point of view, is pretty impressive. To me, that's the biggest legal tech story here is that it is sort of a crash and burn story, I guess.
But yeah, so how many?
But it was.
Oh, I'm fine. I'm going to give you an opportunity to come back because I'm not going to say anything particularly important. I though want to suggest, and I wrote this in my first article. Now I've written a follow-up article, which I'll quickly cover too, which is he's apparently hired as his lawyers for this, John Lauro and Chris Kise, who've been Trump's lawyers all along, which is probably, as I put it, the best bet he's made in a while. Because if you're looking for somebody with the ear of someone with federal pardon power, hiring Trump's lawyers, look, they've been. It's almost like they've been through a situation with a client who's lost drastic amounts of money, done a bunch of bookkeeping fraud to cover it up while juggling a bunch of mistresses. So, you choose people with expertise. But one point that I was making independently of any of this tech stuff is, can we, and I put this in my article, can we like really think through how many people's brains have been fried by poker? So many of these people who get like real deep in that world, and like it's an enjoyable game on the surface, but like Nate Silver's unreadable now, and this happens to Tom. Like poker, not even once.
All right.
Do you have your
Niki, was there something else you were going to say that you forgot?
There's nothing. I had no place to go.
It had something to do with what Joe was talking about, the very tail end. And about the tail end of him talking about the financial stuff, but it was separate from what I'd said before, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it was. I lost it. It was probably the best thing I've ever said, too. It's gone.
Well, once again, Joe has left us speechless.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And that concludes this week's show.
Does it.
I mean, overall, I think the thing about that was just so striking was, like, this dude was living on the edge, man. Like, he had so much going on. I mean, Supreme Court arguments are high stakes, like they are. Like, and it's a lot to prepare for. And by all accounts, from what I've always understood, he did it well, right? Like, he kept getting hired. And I think he was very successful at it. And that in and of itself is challenging. It's
an elite bar. I mean, it's hard to become a lawyer who gets hired for Supreme Court cases, and I mean, I think I don't know, Steve, if you did, but I think we've all, the others of us I know, have all met him at some point along the line, and knew him at some point along the line, and some of us had, I guess, different levels of experiences with him, but. To me, I knew him a long time ago. I would never have anticipated this, and several of us know his wife as well. And it just seemed so out of character for what I would have thought, like so bizarrely out of character. But there you go.
I mean, I had a very negative experience that I won't go into very early on in my legal tech career, but the thing that I think is fascinating about this is from a psychological perspective. Put yourself in his shoes while all of this is going on. Like, even if you've got like underlings doing your initial work, you've got to be on top of these cases. You've got to know the facts. Like, appellate argument is not easy, right? Even if you're not doing the briefs yourself. And then the juggling of 4 mistresses, trying to remember the things you've told each of them, trying to, I don't know how, did they all work there and they all just knew about each other? Did he tell them all
None
separate?
of them actually worked there, right? They just got on the payroll. They were just
I
on the
think that's
payroll.
right. But he has to, just to juggle 4, like a wife and 4 mistresses. That's a lot of people to juggle and keep track of what you've told all of them, make sure that they don't all cross paths with each other. And then on top of that, you've got this high stakes gambling, like high stakes gambling. And like the rush of like being with all these famous people or whatever the case may be and losing all this money and then making all this money and then losing it again. And he must have understood he should have been paying the IRS. Like, I don't know, like he's getting chased by the IRS the whole time in his head. He must have been. I mean, that's a lot of high dopamine, adrenaline, crazy shit to be dealing with in your life. And I can only imagine, I don't know how he fueled all that and kept on top of his life and his world, but it's at some point this stuff all kind of comes crashing together. And the last thing I want to say is I don't think I also think it's symptomatic of this world that we've begun to live in where social media has made everything so small and it makes it seem like everybody's doing so well and everyone's so rich. And so I think sometimes people get caught up in this idea of everyone's so rich and I need to be rich like them. And lawyers in general, we all thought we were going to make so much money and we don't make nearly as much as we thought. And we're not living the high life we thought. And I think it fuels people to try to live up to these standards in their head that they're seeing other people living up to. And it's kind of interesting to see when that stuff kind of topples all down publicly.
So there's a trope in movies and TV shows whenever there's like a ransom or something that Roger Ebert used to call like the exact amount of money, which is whatever the ransom is, it is the exact amount to fill a briefcase right to the top, right? Like that's how it always works. Like whatever. But one thing I actually learned from the indictment is that $968,000 fits in a duffel bag because that is what he brought across the border from one of these trips. And when confronted by customs, he said, "Oh yeah, these are gambling winnings." And then he went on, according to the indictment, to not report that to the IRS, which seems like he didn't understand. Did he think the government doesn't keep records and talk to each other? I mean, just wild. But that's how much $968,000 is, a duffel bag worth.
Which size duffel bag? That's the question.
I guess that's fair.
LL Bean is, but different sizes. All right. Well, there's not even a good segue from that to anything else. Yeah, Steve, I think you're right. We just call it now and go home for the weekend. No, but we do have we've got other stuff to talk about, including a few different conferences that we have been to. And Steve, you were at the biggie, the big consumer tech conference, not a legal tech conference per se, but I know you've written about it, covered it for Above the Law, and extracted, I think, a
Right.
few insights that could be applicable to law. So,
Right.
what did you see?
Well,
I hope you saw the sex bot that Niki was writing about on her Friday column today, wandering
I
around with.
managed to miss that, Nikki. I wished I would have. Although I have seen some of those devices before at CES, and yeah, you have to understand, like there's over 140 plus thousand people that attend this show, so it's all of Las Vegas, and there's no way that you can like see everything. And in fact, what you have to kind of do is sit down in the morning and say, okay, these are the things that are at the convention center, so I'm going to be there all day, because you can't really maneuver much more. Uh, but it's a fascinating show. Probably 75 to 85% of the products that are demoed at the show, you'll never hear from again. I mean, they're just like attention getters. Just, I mean, like here's this, this robot that will act like your dog and run around. And I mean, that's not, I mean, maybe that'll happen someday, but so there's a lot of that. And then there's a bunch of products that like we see at Legal Tech Show that already that promise to do something that other product makers have already put on the market and do better. So, but it's like that 5%, of products that might work someday in some form. So, what did I see for legal? Several things. I went to a panel discussion on deep fakes, which was really scary. And I don't know that I mean, I've written about deep fakes and the problems and the issues. What I came away from that with the sense of is it's sort of like cybersecurity. The bad guys are always going to be one step ahead because of the nature of trying to detect a deep fake or put information on a deep fake that shows that it's, photo's been altered or the video's been changed. And just by nature of there's more of them than there are experts that can do this stuff. And so they're always going to be ahead. And it's even the panelists couldn't when pressed that like they didn't have a good solution. And these were kind of high quality experts in the area. And that was pretty scary actually, where this is going. The other thing that, of course, it was all about artificial intelligence, but the creation of these AI agents where you can you can say, draft me a engagement letter, create a complaint, send the complaint to the client, and schedule a meeting with my client for 2 weeks at his or her convenience. And the agent just kind of does these things. Yeah, I thought that was kind of pie in the sky, but the more I listened to some of these people, not on the exhibit floor, but in the presentations, I kind of had the sense that we're not very far away from these things being able to do it. And some of them are pretty close to that already, to some degree of sophistication. So that was pretty enlightening. And the thing that I drew from that, and I went to another panel where they discussed this, is so when you start looking at what all these tools can do and will do and already can do, they basically are taking and automating non-productive work that people are doing. And so that's going to create a disruption and displacement, even in law firms, because there's a number of people in law firms that do what could be labeled non-productive work. Some of that non-productive work is quote billable, which maybe it is productive work. Then just if you can bill for it, I don't know. But and the point that the panel was making, which I thought was a good one, is a lot of businesses, and I dare say law firms too, they're not sitting down and saying, okay, we're going to displace a lot of work that our people are doing. So we have a choice here. We can either put a program in place to retrain them and give them additional skills, or we can wait till they don't have any work to do and go out in the marketplace and try to hire people with those skills. And it's the point that they were making is the first option is better because you've got people that are already ingrained in the business, understand best the vision and the culture and all of that. And it made me wonder whether law firms and in-house legal departments are really sort of thinking about that. I don't get the impression that they are. They're just like knee-jerking from one thing to the other. So that was, those were some of the things that I thought were significant to legal. Now, everybody always says, well, like, what products did you see that were really goofy and silly, and what products did you see that have a chance? The goofy product that I saw that sort of took the case was this flying car, which is not that unusual for CES because there's all kinds of flying cars. But this car was labeled the first flying car that you can put in the trunk of your car. Thinking like, wait a minute. What? I mean,
I've
if you
seen
have
that.
a flying car, why would you put it in the trunk of your car? And of course the car, was the Tesla truck. It wasn't like a car. So that was kind of silly. The other thing that was really kind of funny was they had this one vendor had this little robot golden retriever puppy, which sort of looked kind of like a golden retriever puppy. And I happened to walk up and there was this service dog, golden retriever service dog that this guy was walking around with. And the poor service dog was looking at this robotic puppy like, what the fuck is this? So that was kind of, but the one product I did see that me is having a chance is glasses that would incorporate a hearing aid so that you now can see and have a hearing aid. And I mean, that's cool because it's practical. And like some of us that are older don't particularly look forward to the day that we have to wear hearing aids, but if I got to put it in my glasses, then so much the better. So I had a lot of fun, and it was really cool to write for Above the Law and kind of push out columns every day, and it's stuff that I'd seen.
So,
No COVID. COVID is done. I mean, I maybe saw 10 people wearing masks the whole time.
yeah.
It wasn't even talked about. I mean, not like, jokes from the podium or, I hope we don't all get sick. It was like, it's done. We're not even talking about it. Who knows whether people get sick or not
Be,
from it,
be,
but
be much
anyways.
more be much more worried about norovirus at this juncture. But I was just going to say, so AI is coming for our service dogs. Just
That's the point.
hardworking,
Yeah,
one more
non-productive.
hardworking segment of
Right.
the economy
Yeah,
driven out.
how are we gonna retrain those poor dogs?
Uh,
No wonder the damn dog was so upset looking at this thing.
those dogs need to learn to code, I guess. That's the
And that's actually like I don't know if you guys have heard about that. That's been a big problem. They had to retire all sorts of service dogs when the marijuana laws changed because they couldn't retrain them that marijuana's okay, but these other drugs aren't. So they had to
amazing.
like retire a bunch of them because they would falsely, they'd indicate marijuana when they're looking for the other drugs. So maybe and it's really hard to train them. So actually maybe AI service dogs are not a bad thing, like robotic dogs in that context.
Well, there
Yeah,
you go.
that whole thing. When I would think about it, because that was a big thing, like robots that looked like little pets, right? And they were kind of cute and endearing. You don't have to take them out, you don't have to feed them, you just plug them in at the end of the day. But I mean, like the reason you have a pet is so you have another being there with you that you can take care of, and now you just got this thing that just sort of roams around. So I don't know if there's a big market for those kind of things. I frankly I got the sense that nobody's like actively marketing those things. They're just like cute to sort of push and sell at CES. The other thing that's really sort of interesting about CES, it's the only show that I've ever been to where to go through some of the vendors' exhibit space, you have to stand in line and wait. Like it's the craziest thing, but like then that would be for the big players like Samsung. They always have this huge space and people wait 20, 30, 40 minutes to go through it. It's kind of weird. But yeah, so that was it was a fun show, that's for sure. Good weather, no snow.
That that description, that sounds like the My Case booth at ABA Tech Show. Like you wait for 30, 40 minutes.
Yeah, right.
Every year I listen to you.
What?
What did I miss? It reminds me
Oh,
of
no. He was just saying that at CES, because it's huge, there's like 40-minute lines to even get to the booths. And I said, just like My Case at ABA Tech Show, so where there's so many people at that show. And you should all go. I'm not disparaging the show, but I think it's safe to say there will not be a 40-minute line for anything at ABA Tech Show.
You just wait.
Niki doesn't have a
Already.
sense of humor about my cases. I discovered in our Slack chat yesterday when I made a joke
I
about Cleo.
don't. I'm very protective of my company and my employer and the products, the wonderful products that we produce. I am. I'm very proud to be employed by that company, and I think it's a great company. And I will defend it to my dying breath. No, I wouldn't go that far.
Fair enough. Well,
You won't go that far. All right.
this wasn't a knock on My Case. If anything, it was a knock on ABA Tech Show, and I don't really think it was that.
Yeah. To say people are lining up to see my case is actually sort of a compliment, if it
Yeah.
were real.
Right, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, what do you mean people don't line up to see us? Of course they do.
Yes, of course. All right. So I was at a conference. I was actually at two different conferences this week, related conferences, where there were actually three conferences. There were actually four conferences going on in Phoenix this week, legal conferences going on. I made it to two of them.
That's like a Tom Goldstein orgy right there. You got like four of them all at once.
Conferences are my mistresses, I guess. Is that what it comes down to? The main conference I went to was the Legal Services Corporation's Innovations in Technology Conference. And I will talk about that in just a second. But first, I wanted to mention the inaugural AI for Legal Aid Summit, which was kind of an adjunct. It was on the Legal Services Conference started on Monday, so on Sunday there was this kind of pre-conference session on AI for legal aid. It was organized by Kristen Sonde, who happens to be in the audience today, so I have to say nice things about her conference. But in fact, I only have nice things to say about her conference, even if she weren't here, because it was a really good conference. And it was only, it's like, I think it was meant to be like 5 hours or so. It probably went about almost 6 hours, kind of a half day program on Sunday. But again, the audience for this thing is mostly people at legal aid organizations who were there for the Legal Services Conference. Varying degrees of knowledge and sophistication about AI. Some people who are actively building AI products in their organizations, but other people who are just trying to figure it out right now. And so the conference was really had a focus on the practical. Had some kind of workshops on like how to write prompts and kind of how to plan out and I even walked people through the process of building a GPT at one point. But what I liked were the presentations. There were several presentations by people saying, here's what we built and here's what it does, or here's how we're using AI, and showing that. And I thought they were really, really effective to let people see the potential power of AI. I mean, some of them are relatively smallish and focused, like this AI bot Roxanne. I'd written about it on my blog last week, but which basically just helps answer renters' questions in New York City about their repair rights. Very specific, but very effective. One of the most interesting presentations I thought of those panelists was Michael Semanchik from the Innocence Project, and we've probably all seen Michael speak at some point or another because he's regular at Clio and other conferences. But he went kind of very specifically through kind of a use case, how he uses co-counsel, the Thomson Reuters co-counsel, showing how he uses it to get through the sort of the voluminous records that are come up in a potential innocence case, and how he can use it to summarize extensive documents and get to the point of what a case is about, find inconsistencies or consistencies or pieces of evidence or whatever else. And he'd actually kind of taken an old case of his and taken all the records and shown how he would have gone through this case had he had co-counsel at the time, and what difference it would have made. So it's a really interesting, that was a really interesting program overall. The keynote that day was Laura Safdie from Case Text, the co-founder of Case Text, and now head of innovation, legal innovation or something like that at Thomson Reuters. So that was that. And then from there went to the next day, the Legal Services Corporation's Innovation and Tech Conference. And this is one that I had written about last year as sort of this contrast between two conferences, because last year I had left Legal Week to go to this conference. I left Legal Week early, and it was like this, this stark juxtaposition of going from the sort of the glitz and the big exhibit hall and the fancy booths and everything else of Legal Week to the Legal Services Conference, where there was like maybe 10 booths. I don't know if there were that many. It's a shoestring operation for the most part at a lot of these legal services providers. Last year I wrote about it as kind of the justice gap in legal technology, because there's just very little funding going into this sector. More now, I think, but still very little funding overall going into the legal services sector. But what struck me this year, and the way I wrote about it in a blog post today, was to kind of talk about the sort of the scrappiness of a lot of these legal services organizations, which, even though they don't have huge budgets for tech development, a lot of them might get a TIG grant, which might be $30,000, $40,000. They're building some really cool tools, and they're doing it internally often. Some of them are now setting up innovation departments within their legal services organization, having people in the title role of, chief innovation officer. And so and there's a whole lot of, again, development going on in terms of building products to tackle access to justice, to help self-represented litigants help themselves more, to help their lawyers do more with technology. So I find it's one of my favorite conferences to go to because there's just this sense, as I said, of sort of scrappiness, of being agile, of being innovative, without a whole lot of resources and tools to work with, but still managing to do this stuff. So I know none of you guys went, but maybe next year you guys should go to it too.
Sounds like it was a great conference. I'm writing about some A to J tools and approaches for my ABA journal column this month. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I see Shelley saying that the TIG grants can be much higher than 40,000. Yeah, I got the 40,000 number from them as sort of an average number of what how the grants average out. But yeah, realize some of them are more than that and some of them are less than that. But, all right. Niki, you had a story that actually maybe kind of goes back to one of the points Steve was talking about how law firms are dealing with their staffing and stuff around AI, but yours is a little bit different.
this just oh wait, I was gonna try to put the link in here, but I missed it. This was just something that caught my eye. The article that I actually wrote this month was about something we've already talked about, or this week was something we've already talked about, which was the Illinois courts policy for judges, AI policy for judges. So instead, I just decided that this was interesting and I would talk about it a bit. It was that our governor in New York is going to require employers with over 50 employees to report if any of the layoffs, like a certain number of layoffs over a certain number, were caused by AI, or AI is replacing those people or something like that. And I thought it was I think it's interesting that she's doing that. I think it's notable that we're doing that in our state. I think it's a sign of the times. I also think it's like impossible to actually enforce or prove that someone failed to report that AI was replacing jobs or something. Like, how do you prove that? How do you so I think it's kind of like a law that's being enacted with no teeth. It's almost more symbolic in my mind, or just it's an indication of the times. But how do you prove that a certain that layoffs, someone failed to report that certain level of layoffs that were in fact due to AI? And what does it mean due to AI? Like, how do you even prove that there's too much attenuation there, and how do you prove that people are lying about it? So I think it's interesting, but I think it's also just sort of a toothless effort. But it's notable. I think it was worth sort of calling out, because it's certainly a sign of the times, right?
I mean, that was my impression, was like, it's how would you ever even, I mean, often an organization isn't even going to know that, ultimately that AI is what caused them to have to eliminate a position or something. I mean, it's like saying, I don't know, did the, I don't know what it's like saying. It's just, it seems like a law without any real meaning, and something that was done more as a stunt than in order to accomplish any real policy goal. But
Well,
that's true of a lot of legislation. So
the only thing I could think of, though, is if you were a worker who was laid off, you could make a claim that the layoff was due to the implementation of AI tools, and perhaps have a private cause of action to recover something, which in the long run could impact. But I agree with Niki. It certainly reflects the fear, and I think the justified fear, that these AI tools are going to disrupt the workforce. And always the standard response to that is, well, we've had things that disrupted the workforce go up before, and it all turned out okay. I mean, when the cars came along and replaced horses and buggies, then people were displaced along with the horses, and it's all worked out okay. But I mean, just because that's always happened before doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen now. I mean, that's, maybe it will, maybe it won't, but this, certainly it struck me coming back from the show that the disruption and the change in the marketplace could be very real and very impactful, in a lot of ways that aren't anticipated.
And there have been some, I've seen, read some headlines. I haven't like really done deep dives into the stories, but certain tech, large tech companies, some of the CEOs have said we're laying off people and replacing it with AI. Like this is in the last few weeks, there have been a number of headlines to that effect, and it's often developers that they're talking about. There's a whole theme lately of coding and replacing coding, and that the GPT 1.0 or whatever it is does such a good job with it, um, and then agentic. There's all that agentic AI and coding, and so it's going to be interesting to see. But I mean, I, you know, I agree, Stu, that people are saying, "Oh, well, this happened before." Nothing like this has happened before. This is like this is, and I think we all agree on that. Like this is going to be unlike anything we've ever seen before. This is going to be so disruptive. Maybe the only thing that's close to it is the, Ford and the rolling out the what do you call the lines in the factory lines or whatever that is. I mean that yeah, I think that's the only thing that's even remotely close to what's going to happen here. But I think this is got such a grander scale, and it's going to happen so fast. I think people aren't even going to. It's going to happen so quickly. It's going to be hard to track it as it happens until you're like 2 years past it, and you look back, and you're like, wow, that just gutted the workforce. I think that's what's going to happen myself. But
That's the concern. I mean, it will. There's no doubt that it's going to displace a lot of work that's being done. I mean, just can't. There's no way around that. Now, whether there be work to replace it and all of that, that's different. But it's certainly going to displace a lot of work that people are doing,
And to your earlier
and
point,
and
Steve, I don't think
fall disproportionately on a lot of people that don't make a lot of money that really depend on those jobs.
yeah. To your earlier point, I don't think there's any. It wouldn't give employees any legal right to a cause of action if their jobs were eliminated because of AI. I mean, unless they had some contractual protection or union protections or something. But there's no. We live in an at will world, and employers are free to replace employees with whatever machinery or AI or whatever else they want. And again, unless there's a collective bargaining agreement or something like that in place that protects them, certainly no legal protection.
I also feel like a lot of different, even professionals, are just in denial. Like I've been talking to my daughter's a junior in college, and she's very interested in going to medical school. But I've been talking to her a lot lately about, and she's decided to take a gap year, which I think is really smart. That wasn't actually my idea, but I have been trying to get her to think about just sort of the broad picture, because AI is going to impact jobs so quickly. Um, Ones that are going to sort of be immune are the hands-on jobs, right? Like the ones where you're uh, until the robots get really advanced and sophisticated. But I think that a lot of medicine is going to get automated in some really interesting ways, and and already with private equity going into medicine and large hospital systems taking over all the doctors' offices. Like I come from a family of physicians, and I have a bunch of uncles and my father who all retired a little earlier than they planned, because all of a sudden they had these large companies, one way or another, owning their practices, telling them they had to start working a lot more than they were working. And they're like all, 65, they're going, no, no, I'm going to retire. You can't make me work like I'm, 28 again, like screw you. And they all just sort of retired. But, there's a whole bunch of forces that are coming together all at once that I think are going to just sort of, they're making us, a lot of people are not really seeing the forest for the trees about what's going to happen to their own profession, legal included. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how quickly this happens, and how a lot of people are kind of just totally taken by surprise. And
There was one of the speakers at the show was relating had how she recently obtained her PhD, and her dissertation was written almost entirely by generative AI. She said, I got an outstanding grade, and but she went on to opine that uh, just what you just said, that a lot of the professions aren't getting their heads around it, and just like college professors. That they are, a lot of what they do can't be replaced by AI learning tools, and I don't get the sense that they're like, I'm the one, who, me, worried? What, me, worried? Some of us are
It's
of the age that won't know what that means, but others are. Who, me,
it's kind of
worried?
ironic talking about this issue in as if coming right after talking about the legal services conference again, because there the theme is constantly that, you know, we just can't possibly keep up with our workforce with everything that has to be done. We're, you know, for
Right.
every 10 cases that come to our door, we can only take one of them. So, I mean, AI, you know, in that sector is not displacing anybody's jobs. It's just trying to help them maybe serve that many more people or help that many more people help themselves without having to need a lawyer in the first place. There are so
Yeah,
many
good
areas
point.
of the legal market where there is just, you know, the need so far outstrips the ability of any legal services provider to address that need, that it's going to be a whole long time before AI is making much of a dent in that, and hopefully it does make a dent in that. It'll be a good thing if it does. All right. Well, should we talk about Harvey?
We should at least flag it. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. So well, I'll just set it up. I don't really have a ton to say about it. It appears as though Harvey's going to have another the like AI named after the rabbit because nobody gets to see it. That's not actually the story, but that's an even older reference than the one we were just joking about. But Harvey is getting another fundraising round, and it is going to be valued at 3 billion, which seems like a lot to me. Um, look, I don't have a, I'm not very good with these financing stories as much as, and so you all have probably better expertise on the financing stuff than I do. I just feel like 3 billion seems like a lot for a legal tech company in a space that is rapidly evolving, where there are huge competitors, more established competitors, and it would require to be getting that kind of evaluation. It would seem to me as though they would need to keep locking up basically the entire legal industry sector every year forever to be worth that much, which seems like, I don't know. It just feels to me like Thomson Reuters and Lexis are going to take some measure of that business, and it's not going to be the sort of thing you can make that kind of money forever on. But I don't know.
Maybe Harvey is holding a royal straight flush and has something lined up with Tom Goldstein.
There we go. There we go. Tom's got action on this.
Yeah, no, it does seem, and we've talked about it a million times, I think, with Harvey, but it's still the product that so many people haven't seen. More, you know, more people, fewer people have seen it than just about anything else out there. And from everything you hear, there aren't a whole lot of differences between what it's doing and what some of the other ones out there are doing. Uh, but
The stealth
good for
product.
them. Good for them. All right. If we have anything else to talk about today. I had a busy, I don't know, what was I blogging? There was like a ton of stories that I blogged about this week, uh, somehow,
I think those are my newsletter.
amidst my travels.
Let me check my
Some of
newsletter.
them were in, oh, I know, actually I thought actually one kind of cool one that wasn't in your newsletter, I don't think, was this thing that Cynthia came out with, this AI powered document analysis, but in email, which I thought was kind of a clever thing, which is it doesn't do anything much more than some of the other AI powered document analysis tools do, but you know, they were working with a major law firm to try and develop develop a, you know, sort of AI driven document review tool, and the law firm people were kind of complaining that they didn't like the whole issue of context switching of the, you know, they're in Word, they're in Outlook, and then they have to go over and use their AI tool over in some other platform and then come back into wherever they are. And so basically what they did is they just developed this tool that when you're in Outlook, you can just send off, you know, if you get a document as an attachment, or if you have a thread where you're discussing a negotiation or something like that, send it off to Cynthia's tool and it will come back with recommendations, analysis, summaries, whatever you want it to do. You can just kind of prompt it, write it an email, and get it to analyze and give recommendations and analysis on a deal you're working on or whatever it is you're working on in your email. So that was a kind of an interesting little twist, not on the AI part of it so much as just the workflow part of it and building it right into Outlook in that way. And then if you want to have a further conversation with it, there's a little link and you get an answer back from their AI in your email, and there's a little link where you can click to open up a chat and further engage and follow up on it. So. Obviously, you guys are very impressed with that one.
Just another AI story, you know.
Just another.
But that actually isn't it. That is an interesting product, I'll have to say.
All right.
But I think you did a piece on not long ago on Describe AI.
Yep,
And
they were at the conference.
I talked to those people the other day. It's just kind of a interesting. What they're doing is interesting. I don't know if you want to say something about it, or maybe you have before, but I mean, after I talked to them, it kind of like it's a good story. Like something good is going on.
Yeah. They're from the Boston area, and they are among the 25 finalists. And the voting is now open on ABA Tech Show, and they are one of the 25 finalists. So people should get over to my blog and vote. I should have the link handy, but I don't. But if you haven't voted on ABA Tech Show yet, I got to put up a reminder post about that. Voting is hot and heavy right now for pick the 15 companies, and they're on there. They actually were one of the 25 last year also and didn't make the final cut, but they've done a lot since then. They've been building on some new features. But yeah, I mean, basically they are a free legal research service that has been using AI to create summaries, to create multi-language versions of cases and do some really interesting stuff. And they're about to come out with some other ways, some other enhancements where they might actually make some money at this because it's entirely free so far.
Yeah.
How come we never talk about Google Scholar? Like, why is that never talked about with legal research? I always wonder this. Like, everyone acts like it doesn't exist or that it's not useful or valuable. I'm including it, Describe AI in my article that I'm writing. So I don't mean to discount them, but I always feel like we never discuss Google Scholar.
I feel like just in my educational role, I'm constantly informing students that it even exists. It's almost like nobody knows this thing's out there. Yeah.
And it's got
That's a good point.
I've written how-tos about it in the past. You can select the courts and you can just search certain courts. I mean, I don't think it's that different from any other search engine. It just doesn't have the summaries, does it? I don't think it does.
Right.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, possibly a closing thought. I'm going to read a passage of this indictment real quick that just hit me. As part of his preparation for his heads-up match against Foreign Gambler 1, Goldstein authored and discussed with Professional Gambler 1 and Professional Gambler 2 a 24-page memorandum detailing the strategy and tactics he had devised based on former Gambler 1's playing patterns, Goldstein's past mistakes while playing him, information gathered from other poker players, and computer simulated practice. Now, tell me AI couldn't have gotten him some time back. He had that, write that 24-page memo. Crunch all of that. See, that is where you could get some time back, time that you need to work for your clients or talk to your mistress. Like that kind of time you could get back with the help of AI.
More time to spend with your mistresses.
You could ask AI to please summarize all the lies I have told to my 4 mistresses and create a table to compare them.
I was having a conversation last night about it, and I said, how would you even keep all that stuff straight? And I was snarked back with, do you have more than 4 friends? And I say, yes. And it's like, do you remember what you say to each one of them? And I said, no, hardly ever do I remember.
Yeah. So on that Google Scholar point, I am curious whether it is fully up to date because at some point I know a couple of years ago it wasn't, but they may be doing a lot better with it. They had but hadn't been keeping it up to date, but I don't know the answer to that. I've never been able to find it. So all right, well, I guess that's it for this week. We'll be back next week. Hopefully there'll be more news from the Tom Goldstein case for us to talk about, and we'll have a new president in office and all of that. So hopefully we'll still
You hear
be.
he's moving the inauguration indoors?
Yeah.
Like, what a wuss. But yeah, he's moving it inside the Capitol. As somebody pointed out on social media, at least all of his followers know how to get in there, so they can still see it.
But they got Carter out of there now, right? He's not in the Capitol.
I
Hopefully
don't
they're
know
not
if
gonna like cross paths or something.
they are raising the flags in violation of the Eisenhower order for it. So, anyway.
Whatever that is. All right. All right. Well, that's it. And thanks everybody for watching. And we will be back next week. Join us next Friday. See you then.
Hold on.
Have a good weekend all.